Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
Hello and welcome to An Unconventional Life. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Strickland, the founder and CEO of Dissertation Done. And I have with me today Dr. Diane Hamilton, who is the founder and CEO of Tenera, which is a consulting and media-based business. She's a nationally syndicated radio host, a keynote speaker, and the former MBA program chair at the Forbes School of Business. She's authored multiple books, many of which are required at universities around the world, including Cracking the Curiosity Code, The Key to Unlocking Human Potential, and The Power of Perception, Eliminating Boundaries to Create Successful Global Leaders. I want to talk about some of those things because that sounds really interesting. She's also been, as a speaker, shared the stage with folks like Martha Stewart and Damon John that I know of right offhand, been featured on Forbes, Inc., Investors Business Daily, all the places, all the things, it seems like, Dr. Hamilton. Thank you for being here with us today and joining us.
Oh, well, thank you, Russell. I'm excited to be here. This is going to be fun.
Oh, I look forward to it. Before we jump in, I want to let everybody know that today's episode is being brought to you by Dissertation Done. So if you're an adult doctoral student and you might need a little help with your dissertation, a little guidance or support, reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done, and we'll have a conversation, see if that's a good fit. If perhaps you have finished your dissertation and you want to be an expert author like Dr. Hamilton here, again, that's something we help folks with. You can reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/book, and we'll have a conversation and see if that makes sense. But again, Dr. Hamilton, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. And I've worked with so many doctoral students going through their journey. So I'm really looking forward to what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, so tell us a little bit about your journey. I always find it fascinating to ask people to reach back into the Wayback Machine and remember why you do this in the first place, because we find our journeys often deviate from our intent at the beginning of the journey. What was it that motivated you to get that doctoral degree initially?
You know, I wish my journey had been as exciting as it has been after I got it, but I'll tell you what it was that led to it. I originally got my bachelor's, Arizona State here in town. I'm in Arizona, obviously. But I liked going to school. I loved learning. I loved it. But going through the parking and the driving and the walking to class in the 120-degree heat, and then some of that wasn't my favorite part. And I never really had it in my mind that I was going to go do more than get a bachelor's. And I was working
all year long, though, because I went in Chicago and we had near 100 degrees in the summer and then like X degrees below zero in the winter. So
it's bad either. Yeah, it's bad either way. But, you know, I learned a lot and I liked it. And I had a great experience. I did most of my education at night while I worked full time. So I didn't get to have the best, daytime experience like everybody else. But so I never thought about going back, but I worked for AstraZeneca for 20 years and they offered free education and you could get your master's. And I thought, well, yeah, if you're going to pay for it, why not? Right. You know, and so back then the University of Phoenix was really a very tough program and it was really very good. And they were what they paid for. My company paid for that. I didn't pick where I went or that's what was offered. And I went through it and I got my master's and I loved it. And I thought, wow, this distance education wasn't even online yet. It was called distance education because you did it through the mail at that point. And I didn't even know you could do that. I actually attended some of the night classes and I thought I liked it better just conversing over the phone and doing it the other way, which I can't remember what they called that program anymore, Access or something, but long time ago, long before they had online.
I remember they used to use that word, right? Correspondence education.
Yeah, it was beyond correspondence education because you were doing much more, but it was very complicated. It was very hard. And actually it was one of the harder classes I've ever taken. It was quite a program. And I know University of Phoenix sometimes takes abuse in the movies and things, but they really had a good program at that time. I loved it. And I thought, well, that was kind of fun, and they paid for it. And I never thought anything other than that I would do. But then I started to want to teach because I thought, I had heard about online courses had become available, and I had a master's by that point. And I thought I would love to teach some of those because I just loved, I used to teach a little bit when I used to sell computers, and I had a distance fascination with computers and things like that. So I actually got into teaching at University of Phoenix through their Axia division. I think it was Western International back at that point. And I was teaching a few courses. And as I was teaching, I thought, I love taking classes. Might be kind of interesting just to see what what the doctoral programs were out there and see what it was like. And I had no intention of ever getting a PhD in my life, never thought of it until I was teaching. And I thought, well, how hard could it be? I kind of just had this curiosity of how hard it would be. And I found
words, huh?
What's that? Famous last words. I actually ended up going and getting so my master's was in organizational management. Then I went and I ended up getting a PhD in business management. And so it's actually hard.
It is.
I found that out, but I loved it. I learned a lot. Every time I went back to school, there was a distance between each time. So I had a lot of appreciation for my students later who came in and had taken a break, because then all of a sudden there's APA, and what was that? I used to have footnotes and where'd they go, and that kind of stuff. But I really never had this passion. Like I always wanted to be a teacher. I always wanted to have a PhD. I never had any of that. I just fell into it, but that really opened up a lot of doors that I, had never even thought of.
Absolutely. And I wanted to just highlight for everyone, Dr. Hamilton said it was hard, right? If you're in the midst of this,
not easy.
It's not unusual. A lot of folks never have any trouble in school until they get to the doctoral program, or in particular working on their dissertation. And then all of a sudden it's like I hit a ceiling, and maybe this is my ceiling. And I want to just let everybody know that's not your ceiling. Everybody hits a point where they struggle and it gets hard. And it doesn't mean that you're not good enough to go to the next level. It just means that now you have to work like all the other people had to work a long, long time ago.
Yeah. Well, some of the hard parts are trying to juggle everything else you're doing along with it. For me, my least favorite part would be like statistics or something. Everybody's got a part that they love, right? Or the part I don't mind the APA. I don't mind the editing. I don't mind a lot of that stuff, which other people hated. And you find the things that you need to work on. Let's just put it that way.
So was there a point as you were going through the dissertation process where you felt really stalled, or you had one of those reckonings where you're having to decide, is this something, is it worth it? Am I going to finish? Can I finish? Did you reach a moment like that at all?
They kind of made fun of me for how fast I could do things. Actually, I'm a Nike person. I'm a just do it. I don't procrastinate. So I remember in the master's program, I think I broke their records of going through it as fast as you could. And I think I might have in the PhD program as well. I didn't go back to University of Phoenix for that. I went to North Central for mine, but I loved their program, and I thought, oh, I want to do that. And I really found it very challenging. But for me, I actually had a professor, I've told this story on my radio show before, who I had gone through the dissertation process. I was almost ABD. I can't remember where it was. I was right when you were going to pick your dissertation topic. And I had this guy, he was insane. I swear, he was a horrible guy. I've never switched professors in my whole life, but this guy I dropped after one conversation. Wish I could remember his name. I kind of want to call him. I get on the phone with him, and we're supposed to talk about my topic. And he answers the phone and he says, "Welcome to the cave." He goes, "I'm going to eat you up like Jell-O pudding. This is going to be the hardest course and you're going to suffer." And he just this horrible thing, whatever he said. Okay. And I'm like, who is this guy? And so I had to tell him what my topic was going to be. And I knew I wanted to study sales performance, but I didn't know more than that at that point. And he heard me say the sales performance, but he thought I said, and its relationship to emotional intelligence. And he goes, oh, that would be great, emotional intelligence and sales performance. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I said. I had no idea what he was talking about, right? So I looked it up and I'm like, yeah, that's a great topic. And it was so new at the time. It wasn't like now where everybody knows about it. It was so different. But I remember having the reason the guy was just kind of crazy because the first paper I turned in within a day, the minute they tell me something's due, it's the next day they have the paper in their hand. And he gave me an A, but he said, just think how much better this would be if you spent time and you did this and you did that. So I wrote the next paper in a day, like I always did. And then I held on to it for a couple of weeks and then I gave it to him and he goes, see how much better that was. And so some of these guys are, you've got to learn how to work around the different personalities. And I learned
engineering in this degree process for sure.
There is. And I ended up being a doctoral dissertation chair later at University of Phoenix. And I've worked for sometimes 10 universities at one time. So I have looked at all these different programs and I know from that aspect what they offer. And also I was the editor-in-chief of an online website where I blogged every day about online education. So my first book was on online education. And I think it's really fascinating to look at the different aspects of what you can, what it takes. I had dissertation checklists I used to post on my blog. I did all kinds of stuff to help students. So what you're doing is really important. And I think so many people need it.
Well, I mean, there's so many people that are just sort of lost and alone in this process and have a connection. You don't have a campus community to turn to in a lot of cases that have that connections there. But you mentioned, with the holding on to the paper for a while. I remember we had when I was in high school, we had a history teacher that was horrible about, she had to mark up papers. That was like her reason for living, it seems like. So one day we were, a few of us in the class, we were pretty close with our chemistry teacher. And so we were just kind of bitching at him about how she was with grading. And he knew we were good students and everything. He said, well, here's what you do. And this was back when you wrote papers, like with
handwritten. Yeah.
And so usually you would put your name in the upper right-hand corner. You'd go down a little and the date, and you go down a little bit and you would put the title of the paper in the middle, and then you start writing. And he said, well, this time put the date over there on the right and put your name on the left, and then do everything else exactly the way you would do. Like, what? That's a stupid idea. What? And sure enough, she took the marker, circled the name, drew an arrow over to the other side, and said where it's supposed to be. And then she felt at peace that she had marked it.
You threw her a little bone.
Gave her something to do.
That's funny.
And that was it. So we couldn't all do that, obviously.
You just kept randomly picking weird things to throw into your paper for her to mark. That's funny.
But yeah, and that was my first, I think the first recollection I have of dealing with people on a psychological level, of like figuring out what motivates them and giving.
Wow. You will deal with all kinds of people in your dissertation process. I have seen just everything. We're all different.
And to your point of firing a professor at some point, it's very important that you are strategic about what it is that you want to do, what it is you want to accomplish. If you want to write the best dissertation that has ever been written, ask yourself why. That's not necessarily the best use of your time, but if it is what you want to do, then you're going to find somebody that's going to do that. It's going to help you to make this the best paper ever.
Can I add to that? Because I think I learned something very important. Just, if that's what you want to do, great. But a lot of what you're learning in the dissertation process is not how to cure cancer. It's how to write and how to research. Yeah. And whether you solve the world's problems in your dissertation, most people don't. It's the learning the process mostly, and learning to be a researcher and learning the whole picture. And so if you try to take off too big of a bite, it's just going to be more of impetus, I think, for just failure and down the road. And I think that find the thing that you're passionate about and then try to make it as small and manageable as possible. Because for me, I didn't look at all of emotional intelligence. I looked at sales performance, and I looked at it in mortgage sales professionals, and I got very specific.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
When I was saying, if that's what you want to do to write the best dissertation ever, I'm saying don't do that. You can make choices. You're an adult, but know what you really want and understand and think about why you want that. And most folks want to graduate. That's what they want to do, because you don't ask, if you want help from an expert, you don't go look for a doctoral student, right? You look for a doctor. So don't remain a doctoral student.
Well, and don't do it. I think it slows you down. For me, that guy was not good for me, because I lose momentum if you slow me down. And you're going to slow yourself down with some of this stuff, and then it's going to become overwhelming. I mean, I used to, you tease around with your students, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Well, that's what you have to do in the dissertation process. And it can seem overwhelming when you're looking at hundreds of pages potentially of writing. And if you look at it that way, it's too much. And you have to just think of one step. I used to have them start with chapter 2 and look at all the literature out there and look for gaps in the literature to see, what has not been covered, and just start with little things like that to give you your space, because I think people become overwhelmed. They think too much, too big picture will overwhelm you.
See, I actually go even a step further, and I tell students to start with chapter 3, figure out what it is you can do, and then figure out how to position it so that your committee will approve it, and then start doing all of the work. But until you have a plan, like if you were to pull out of the driveway and start driving, you would be really disappointed really quickly, because you don't know where you're going, if you're on track, when you're going to get there, any of those sorts of things.
Right.
But put a destination in the GPS, and you know where you're going and what you're going to do when you get there, and it's a lot easier. And for the students that I've worked with, we found that the last stopping point for people is collecting and analyzing their data. After they've done that, the only other things they have to do is get their committee to approve the dissertation, which their committee is already predisposed to do because they approved their proposal,
right?
And write the thing. So your committee's already predisposed to do their part. You know how to do your part. That's it. Collecting the data, you're relying on other people. Analyzing the data can be complicated. You got to get that straight in your head. But once you conceptualize,
that's the worst. For me, that was the hardest.
And depending, that's something that a lot of people have jams about too. Figure out what, if you have a psychological jam about something, just talk to somebody about it. Figure out there are ways to get around it. So don't let don't let the big scary thing that you know is down the road concern you too much. Find somebody to help you get through that, because there are lots of ways to do that. Right.
Definitely.
Anyway, but it sounds like you've done some really, really cool things since you graduated, and I'd like to talk about that. First, though, let me ask you, as you were working on this dissertation, sales and emotional intelligence and all this sort of thing, were you thinking about the curiosity code or some of the things you're doing now?
Not at all. Was not thinking anything. At that point, I was, I had just come I was a pharmaceutical rep before I was in lending and real estate and all that. And then I was teaching, and I was just teaching at the time, going through that. And I was thinking, well, it'd be nice to teach some more. And as I took on more education-based jobs, which you can't really get anymore with just a master's, you really need to have a doctorate. You really get so much opportunity to do a lot of things. And so I took a full-time position for the first time, and that's now the Forbes School of Business, a part of University of Arizona here. And that really moved me along, because I was doing a lot of things within that, where I was working alongside Steve Forbes and, really cool people. Yeah. And it was working as part of that board of advisors. I would go to these meetings, and I'd get to sit next to billionaire Ken Fisher and talk to him. And I was interviewing people. I don't know what part of me wanted to interview Ken Fisher, but that was my first person I had interviewed. And he's a billionaire, and he's not the easiest guy to interview, because he's super smart and he's got a lot of wit, and he'll tease you. And, he's not the first one you want to go for, you know what I mean? And he was wonderful though. And I think, doing that made me interested in interviewing people. And when I left that job, even though I still work for them as an associate faculty, I was running the MBA program at that point when I left. And I had written a few books right after I wrote my dissertation, because now you have a Ph.D. writes books, right? So I wrote a book on online education. I wrote a book on personality assessments from my experience working in emotional intelligence and Myers-Briggs and that. And I wrote a book on reinventing your career because I'd done it so many times. So I had gone out to go to be a speaker and an author at that point, because I was setting up my website. And the guy who was putting my website together is a Hall of Fame speaker, really great guy, Ford Six, did a great job with my website. And as I was talking to him, he said, you need to get some more people interviewing you to update your website to have you more, relevant, because it's been a while since you've written books, but so we don't have new content to put up. So the first person who interviewed me was had a nationally syndicated radio show. And I had just done a little bit of interviewing with Ken Fisher and meeting all the people from our speakers bureau who had come in, all these Forbes 30 under 30s that I'd met. And I was kind of in that mindset. And he's, did a great job interviewing me. Jim Beach's show was great. And I said, how did you get this job? Right. He said, well, I think I could get you a position on the shows. Apparently you had to start in 2 weeks and have all your guests and all your show stuff all ready in 2 weeks. And I'd never done that at all. So I had to figure out how to do a radio show. I had to figure out how to get the phone calls into my computer, into the, all my ads, all my intro, outro, everything you could do, plus have 2 weeks of guests ahead of time in the bucket when I started in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So it was crazy. And I did it, but I had a lot of people I had known, like the Forbes 30 under 30 people who had come in to speak. And I had, actually my first show was 2 Forbes 30 under 30s. So it was really so much fun. This is almost 5 years ago. I've interviewed like 1,400 people maybe since then. And Ford, the guy who does my website, goes, Diane, I told you to get a little bit of content. You did a little more than I thought, right?
So a little bit means.
A little overdid it. But, there was just so much in there that I got. I started to speak because part of as being the MBA program chair, they volunteered me to speak for Forbes. So the very first person I interviewed was billionaire Ken Fisher. The very first speech I gave for free, well, it wasn't even for free, paid speech, was for Forbes. So when I jump in, I jump in big, So I've written for, Forbes and all these different other areas. And I think I've just touched on so many things. So I help people learn how to do podcasts now. But my main focus, I started to be interested, back to your question about curiosity. I started to look at all these people on my radio show. And Steve Forbes has been on, Ken Fisher, all these people I've interviewed, and they were all super bright, super interesting, and very curious. They wanted to know more. So I thought, I'm going to write a book on curiosity as my fourth book. And as I started to write it, the person who had studied emotional intelligence for my dissertation came out, and I started to look for the assessments. How do you assess the curiosity? And and as I started to look at the assessments, they all told you if you had high or low levels, just your range. Well, what if you had low? Then what do you do? Is what I wanted to know. And so for me, my doctoral dissertation journey really helped in this next process, which is I created the Curiosity Code Index, which is the only assessment in the world and the first to ever determine the factors that inhibit curiosity. Right. And I had to go back and relearn some of that statistics I didn't love. And I actually kind of appreciated it now because I saw meaning and purpose for it. And my work nominated by Thinkers 50 Radar, which is kind of the Academy Awards for business thinkers out of the world, which is amazing. And I'm very honored to serve with alongside all these people like Amy Edmondson and Francesca Gino and all these Harvard professors that are just who are just amazing. And so I think, one thing leads to another thing leads to another thing, but my curiosity book, which is endorsed by Steve Forbes, and all my work, it kind of just everything kind of, in the education world, we say scaffolds or whatever, you just one thing piles on and you just get to the next level, and you don't think so much. You just keep taking opportunity. And I think when an opportunity arises, I'll jump on it. If it's something I've worked everywhere from, editor-in-chief of a website to taken on a dean role. I've taken on, different things. And if it's the right opportunity, it really opens the door for something else.
For the next thing. And that's, I mean, I could not have scripted what you said any better to tell folks that when you get when you're working on a doctoral degree, finish it, get it done, because these are the opportunities that follow. You have to be out there, you have to be present, you have to be, making yourself available. But it doesn't take a whole lot more than that. It's like this huge magnet that just draws opportunities to you once you have that doctoral degree, because most people don't. Like 99% of the population doesn't have that.
Well, and I would say one thing I would do now, if you haven't done it, and I did a lot more later, was to build your network on social media, because you don't know where that's going to lead. And I think when I started my radio show, I had maybe 500 followers or whatever it was, that people have on LinkedIn, and then immediately went to 20,000 because I, started connecting and meeting, and they're really interesting people. And I think you really need to look around and who can I connect with and what can I be sharing with other people, and don't focus it on you, focus it on them. Share other people's content, share things of what you're going through with your journey, of course, but focus a lot on how you connect with others and do things for other people. Because when you get out and have your doctoral dissertation done, you will have your network already ready, and opportunities will be much more available.
Absolutely. Beyond the networking, which of the opportunities do you think that you took on was most fruitful, I guess? Which one of them have you been able to leverage most since you graduated?
Well, having a radio show led to everything. So I have to say that in a way, because it led to a lot of boards I'm on now. I mean, I worked from the board of advisors of DocuSign with Keith Kroc, who wrote the foreword of my book, who is the billionaire genius behind DocuSign and Ariba. And then he became, undersecretary, and all the things he's done, and I've worked on a couple boards with him. With the Global Mentor Network is another one I've been on. I'm on several boards, and I have, some VC work I do. I work on boards with like Radius AI here in Arizona, which is, amazing startups. I mean, there's just so much that those kinds of things that have interested me and led to some of my VC work. And any kind of investing, if anybody's interested in doing that, that's a great opportunity for that. A lot of people do the radio shows to get business as a speaker and a consultant. I didn't do it for that reason. I did it because I truly was interested in knowing what people do and what their hobbies are and things, and I mean what has made them successful or whatever. But I have there are movies made about people. I mean, Molly's Game Molly was on my show, or Craigslist Craig was on my show, or whatever. All these people, Richard Stallman wrote Linux GNU code, whatever it is, all these people, from Crusoe, the celebrity dachshund's been on my show just because I thought he was interesting. I don't know, you get to pick the people. I mean, Albert Bandura was on my show. I mean, you think he's 94 years old, you can't teach a class that his name isn't on. Daniel Goleman was on my show, the main guy in emotional intelligence, which I wrote my dissertation on. I mean, think about these things, they really open up doors to, and it made me write the book, and writing the book made me create the assessment. And creating the assessment is such a huge thing, because I'll forever have had this impact, because curiosity is the key to everything in the business world. Innovation, engagement, everything. Everybody's trying to pick. Everybody's hiring me to speak about soft skills, emotional intelligence kind of things. But what leads to that? A lot of it is curiosity based. And if you could improve curiosity, then you can improve everything that slows people down, status quo, all the things that people are trying to get out of to improve productivity. So I've become the curiosity guru of sorts, you know what I mean? Because of that, which also led to my fifth book, Perception, which ties curiosity into perception and global learning and culture and a lot of the things. And I co-wrote that with Dr. Maya Zelihich, who became the MBA program chair after I left at Forbes.
What a fascinating history. And just, it's amazing to me, all the people I talk to, because you're right, having a platform running a show is one of the best ways to meet new and interesting people, and to hear over and over again all of the amazing opportunities that have come from this place of, I earned a doctoral degree, and therefore, in a sense, I became more interesting. There's a halo effect around me where people want to have me. Why do you think you got that first radio show offer, by the way? How much do you think your doctoral degree had to do with that?
I think that I wouldn't have gone that direction if I hadn't have gone through the doctoral process, because I wouldn't have taught so much. I wouldn't have had the opportunity at Forbes. I wouldn't have had all that because you wouldn't have gotten to that level. So it did have an impact. I think that a lot of people they want to write books. That's one of their motivations, and it really wasn't my motivation, but it led to that later. But if you're thinking of writing a book because of this, and it's getting to be, the business card is no longer your calling card anymore. You have to at least have a book, and your book is your showing your expertise, your level of knowledge. And so if you're going to go on to be a consultant, a lot of people don't want to teach. They want to do some other things with their PhD. They don't want to research. They want to do something else. And a lot of them are just an authority, as you are here, an authority on this. And you don't know what you're going to do with it. But if you're thinking of writing a book, a lot of it is your networking and building your foundation of your network. And if you ever try to get anything published, they want to know who follows you, who's looking at you. And this is a time to start to build that. So I said that before, but I think about those things as you're writing. Maybe start blogging maybe about your journey or something, just so you get used to connecting with people.
And particularly with, if you're still working on a doctoral degree program, you've got to continue to develop that ability to write for people. Because when you're writing in your dissertation, that's writing that no one's going to read outside of your committee. It's never going to happen. But there's the notion of taking what you learned and writing it for a public audience, for people outside of academia. And so to blog and things like that, I think helps keep those muscles in tune while you're simultaneously learning how to write as an academic on the other side.
Yeah, I think you have to learn to write two different ways: the academic writing and then what everybody else wants to read. But the academic writing, it really teaches you discipline. I mean, just how nitpicky they can be. I had no idea you can't have one extra space apparently in this world, or you no contractions or no superfluous words or whatever, all the things you learn. It really helps you later to write better, even when you don't do it in a scholarly voice.
Yeah. But I tell folks all the time, when our students, when they graduate, I'm like, okay, now do you want to write a book someone will actually read? Because you just read the first book is your dissertation, but that's getting published into the dungeons of UMI and never to be seen again for most people. But you can take that same expertise and write a book on that same topic or on something else, because once your first name is doctor, people give you a lot of latitude to write about whatever you want to, so you can become an expert on that pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's something that just is so foundational to everything. And I don't think you see it when you're in the middle of it. You think it's the end, and it's really the beginning. Yeah. To me, just getting over the psychological telling yourself it's so hard. I mean, when I say it's hard, it was challenging, but there was no point that I thought, oh, I can't do this, or it's too hard. It's just like, oh, this is really interesting. And I learned so much. I loved it. I kind of would take the next thing. If there was a next thing, I want to know how hard that is. I mean,
yeah, I've got the same. I forgot how they characterize these, but I learned a while back about some psychological archetypes, and I learned I'm a hunter archetype, because I watch sports and I see the guys celebrating after the Super Bowl or after the World Series or something, and I just don't get it, because I would be out there like, wow, that was awesome. Okay, here's what we're going to do next year.
Yeah. It's hard not to. I mean, that's why the guys who went to outer space get a little bummed out, because then what do you
now what do I do?
That? Yeah.
But got a time machine on them.
Right. So I mean, always have another goal in mind, I think, and you may, I guess for me, I always am looking for the next challenge.
Yeah, me too. I have my goals I'm working on now, and already the goals after those, I know what they are. They might not be clearly established, but I kind of know what they are. And that's something that that drives me. I know everybody's different as far as that's concerned, but that's when you said that, it resonated.
Yeah, yeah.
So what do you think was the most surprising thing to happen to you after you earned your doctoral degree because of the doctoral degree? I mean, you talked about all of these wonderful things. At what point were you in a room and you were just like, no, this isn't my life?
I think being up on stage sometimes, I spoke to Sherm, you've got 1,000, 2,000 people in the room and you're looking at, and they're all staring at you and you're the expert and everybody's thinking, you're the one they're going to for this or that. I think those are the pinch me moments, the speaking for Forbes, you got the bright lights in your face and you're like, okay, people are sending me to all around, the world for different things, or, when they put my curiosity code index into the schools, or when they've added my book as required reading at another university, or if it becomes up available in Africa or what, you go like, oh, this is really cool,
Africa.
Yeah. So I get people from all over the world writing to me and asking me questions and interviewing me. I do my show 3 days a week. So I'm doing maybe interviewing 6 people a week on my own. And then I'm on 2 or 3 other shows a week for their shows like this one. And, you're just meeting people you would never otherwise have met and learning and expanding. And every day I learn something new and I love that.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, for me, the sort of pinch me moment, I was invited to teach a seminar in Paris. So it was quieter than being up on stage with Forbes and everybody, but I was invited to teach a seminar in Paris.
It's pretty good. Paris. Yeah.
Not bad. The pinch me moment was, so I got to the hotel and the room wasn't quite ready. I put my bags down, took my briefcase, walked down the street to the park in front of the Notre Dame Cathedral and sat down and started answering emails. And I was like, okay, I'm answering emails, but are you kidding me?
It is amazing when you get those. I think Thinkers 50 is a pretty amazing thing for me. I went to their event almost 2 years ago. And, I'm walking around in ball gown with everybody in ball gowns from Harvard and everywhere else from all around the globe with all the smartest minds in the room. And you're like, this is really, amazing thing.
It's awesome. What was the book writing experience like for you? I know a lot of our folks, after they graduate, that's one of the things they really want to do. You mentioned you kind of jumped right into that, but what was that experience like for you kind of starting out?
I wrote 3 of them the first year, right out of my dissertation. After I finished and graduated, I just wanted to know what it was like to write a book. And they're not my favorite books that I've written. One was because I wrote it with my daughter. And actually, that one is called It's Not You, It's Your Personality. And my agent had me write in a more irreverent tone because Skinny Bitch was a popular book at the time. And so I wouldn't have written in that tone. That's not me so much, but my daughter put it into that tone and I helped write the content and we did it together and it was fun because of that. So that one actually, I built a course around it at a local university here of foresight and a course in technology. And we ended up using that book, which was fun. But my journey was very similar with the curiosity. I wrote Cracking the Curiosity Code and I wrote The Power of Perception. Those 2 books are my last 2 books in the last 2 years. And those books, the journey, I took them as very seriously as books that I wanted to change something in the world, to fix the business setting, to not just know what it's like to write a book, but to actually
share a message,
make it be an important book. And so for me, I learned a lot from the first 3 books of what I wouldn't do, what I would do, or differently. Those were kind of experimental things. I think the first one I wrote about online education was the Online Student's User Manual, was to teach people how to be an online student. And I liked that I was doing that kind of thing. And then the 3rd book was How to Reinvent Your Career, but I was just trying to help people. But this one was really, the Cracking the Curiosity Code was my life lesson. I wanted to be known for the person who changed how people think about curiosity and getting out of status quo thinking. And because it went along with the assessment, and so did the perception book went along with a perception assessment. Those were completely different because I kind of had them as companion books to the assessment. So you learn all about the value of the, curiosity or perception in the books, and then you take the assessment and you move forward. So those, I think that was a journey because, you have to, just like in any book, you come up with your outlines and you decide how to set it up. And I learned a lot from a guy who I dedicated Maya and I both dedicated our last book to, a guy named G. Ross Kelly, who died right before it published. But he worked a lot with us to help us with the alignment of the book and, just how to showcase certain things in certain ways. I've always learned from him, from my other book. He just was a friend and a really great guy. And I think every time you write a book, you learn something, what you would not do the next time or what you should have done. Yeah. And the great thing with my curiosity book is I had the audio book. I had Diane Graham do the voiceover for it. And I just saw him on TV the other day. He's a famous actor, and he did Neil deGrasse Tyson's book, Death by Black Hole, which is one of my favorite books, by the way. And to have Diane Graham, the voice of audiobooks, most beautiful voice ever, do my voiceover for my book, that was another pinch me moment, by the way.
Yeah.
He was on my show too.
Amazing. I love, you name drop Neil deGrasse Tyson. My first academic experience is in the hard sciences, and I love the way he communicates things with
funny,
just amazing. Yeah, funny, and but I think can help get the point across to people. In a way that other famous scientists maybe couldn't do. I remember when I was in college, A Brief History of Time was a very popular book from Stephen Hawking, and some social scientists did an experiment at some point where they put I forgot what it was, but they put money in a book along with an envelope saying send this envelope in and we'll send you back more money, like $100 or something. It was not it was a real amount of money. And just for sending in an envelope is for $100. I don't think there's a lot of people whose time isn't worth licking an envelope in. So what they found is that none of them got sent back because people would put that book on their coffee table. And
they never read it.
It was a status symbol.
I think I had heard that. That's a great.
It was something, but I think that whereas people would perceive Hawking as being less accessible, a lot of what Neil deGrasse Tyson does is more accessible to. That's really important for everybody when they're talking about their area of expertise to remember to draw your audience in. But listen, I really, really appreciate you spending time with us here today. This has been wonderful. I think inspirational for our audience to know all these things are out there and available to you. You just have to grab hold and remain open to them. So that's amazing. If anybody wanted to continue the conversation, find out more about your radio show or grab one of the books or the assessments or whatever, what is the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Well, my main website is drdianehamilton.com. So that's DRDianehamilton.com. They can follow me at Dr. Diane Hamilton on all the social media. If on my site, they can get to the curiosity codes information, or they go directly to curiositycode.com. They can get a free chapter if they're interested in reading the kinds of things I write. And I don't even know if it's out there. There used to be a dissertation checklist on my blog. Probably if you go to drdianehamilton.com/blog and search by dissertation checklist, you might even be able to find it still. I don't know how up to date it would be though.
So lots of points of contact there. If you missed some or all of that, go to our blog, dissertationdone.com/blog, and find Dr. Hamilton's episode there, and we'll link to all of the social media and the books and all the things, because we like to make it easy that way. But again, thank you so much for being here with us. I had a wonderful time.
I did too. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was great.
You're welcome. And just remind folks that today's episode's been brought to you by Dissertation Done. So if you think you might need a little help, guidance, or support on your dissertation project, reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done. And again, if you want to be that award-winning author who's bringing in all the opportunities like Dr. Hamilton here, reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/book. and we'll help you through that process. Again, Dr. Hamilton, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
And to everyone else, have a wonderful day and go out and live your unconventional life. Bye for now.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.